So this is him on
Condemned
CNN.
anti-Semitism before and since your arrest, and a court also found those allegations baseless, the allegations now put forward by the Department of Homeland Security. So why do you think they are describing you this way and continuing to target you potentially for arrest?
This is simply weaponization of anti-Semitism to silence the speech. And Wolf, as you've mentioned, I've been always, whether publicly or privately, against any form of discrimination and of racism, including anti-Semitism. But they want to use that as smokescreen, so they can just like benefit from that unfortunately that like very hateful speech that's happening, so they can silence my speech. It's simple and clear. And as you said, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration failed to present any evidence of me saying anything anti-Semite or even engaging in any anti-Semitic or hateful engagement. But because it's easier for this administration, it's easier for the Israel lobby in this country to silence the speech, to throw me in prison, than actually reflect on what I'm saying, actually reflect on what these students are talking about, which is simply end of the genocide, end of the war. We don't want our tuition money to go toward investing in weapon manufacturers at Columbia University, or this administration to use the tax money to fund Israel weapons and bombs in Gaza. So it's absurd like that.
You can see the co-host with Wolf there is preparing to ask an extremely stupid question, and I play the whole bit just because I want to remind people of, what it is being actually silenced by this kind of moronic insistence that we're about to get from the host here about it, because I think purposefully and clearly and correctly notes how these kind of claims of anti-Semitism are being used to limit speech in this country. Which is great for something like that to be on CNN, I will say. But they are about to push some really incredible nonsense right up here.
They are actually weaponizing like anti-Semitism, because anti-Semitism is happening and it's being used by this administration. It's Marco Rubio who's supporting these like neo-Nazi parties in Europe. It's the Trump administration who's meeting with Holocaust deniers. It's not me. We're simply calling for the rights of the Palestinian people, for their justice and freedom. And as I mentioned before, and as I mentioned now, Jewish students and just the Jewish American public are an integral part of the Palestinian liberation movement in this country. And this is what's frightening this administration and the Israel lobby in this country.
Just to be clear here, though, do you specifically condemn Hamas, a designated terrorist organization
All right.
in the United States, not just for their actions on October 7th?
I condemn the killing of all civilians, full stop. But what I don't want to get into is no, I am very clear with condemning all civilians. I'm very straight in my position in that part. But it's disingenuous to ask about condemning Hamas while Palestinians are the ones being starved now by Israel. It's not condemning October 6th, where 260 Palestinians were killed by Israel on before October 7. So I hate this selective outrage of condemnation, because this is not, this wouldn't lead to a constructive conversation. And this is also like what we want to deal with is the root causes of why that happened.
So she's about to double down on this, and I think we can play some of it through here. What I want to note again, he opens up this clip, I think, pointing out some very, very important things for the audience and for Americans to hear about what's going on with the way that anti-Semitism is being weaponized to silence speech, and also about the very, very worrying and real threats that we're getting from the Trump administration in how it's been cozying up to neo-Nazis, to Holocaust deniers, right? These are all things that are like of important, are important for people to hear. But we're about to have this conversation completely derailed because of her wanting him to say I condemn Hamas in particular, separate from everything else, with no context or anything else going on there.
As if that's like relevant to what if he doesn't do that, then you can throw him out of the
Yeah.
country or some shit. Like, who gives a fuck? Well, how is this? This is not. This insistence that is relevant. It's ludicrous. What's at issue is how you are currently feeding into, despite the setup from Wolf Blitzer, who started his career in Tel Aviv denying Israeli war crimes. Despite his frankly magnanimous setup, that's saying like you're not anti-Semitic. Why do you think they're doing this to you? The continued insistence, like, well, maybe you are
And
pro
again,
Hamas.
you know, he's also is being very, very clear. He says like he condemns violence against civilians, right? And he doesn't want to have what's going on in Palestine right now ignored, because that is what this conversation is about doing, is about saying, oh, here's the reason why, you know, they're killing hundreds of people who are trying to get sacks of flour to feed their family, right? He's saying, I don't want to participate in the Israeli justification of the mass murder campaign that they've been involved in for 2 years, of the genocide that they've been involved in for the past 2 years.
You know what it's like? It's like if back during World War II, people said, well, look, this Holocaust stuff, the show, it's bad. Like, I agree. But do you condemn Batar, which Albert Einstein compared to the brown shirts? Because otherwise, I don't really want to continue having this conversation about, Auschwitz and Birkenau, because you haven't condemned, Jabotinsky. Like, that's fucking ludicrous.
Well, it's just saying, I don't want to have the conversation about the subject we're having a conversation about. I want to change the subject. But anyways, he does very well here, so let's hear it.
And it's in no way anyone can justify
Just to be clear,
the killing of civilians.
Mahmoud,
yeah.
we did ask about, we've talked at length about your views, of course, on the Palestinians, but it is fair to ask you about whether you condemn Hamas, because the Trump administration has claimed that you are a Hamas sympathizer. So it's very important to actually ask that question in this broad conversation.
Yeah, I simply asked and protested the war in Palestine. That's what I did. That's my duty as a Palestinian, as a human being right now, is to ask for the stop of the killing in my home country. And that's consistent with who I am. I'm a firm believer in international law and human rights, and all my values come from that point. It's just like, to me, it's always, as I said, disingenuous and absurd to ask such questions when literally 62,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel. And that's why I wouldn't really engage much into such questions on condemnation or not, because selective condemnation is not, wouldn't get us anywhere. It's just like hypocrite, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you have to add there, Matt?
So, do you know who that Pamela Brown is?
No, you have to tell me.
So her Wikipedia, not super interesting. Born in '83, worked up through local news. It looked like father, 55th governor of Kentucky, former owner of the Boston Celtics and the Buffalo Braves, who went on to be the Los Angeles Clippers. And most interestingly, maybe to me, is the guy who bought Kentucky Fried Chicken from Colonel Sanders, keeping him on the payroll and blowing it up into a giant chain. John Young Brown Jr. is her father. So, and her mother was a sportscaster, looked like a Miss America too. So, interesting just who gets to just come on and derail conversations.
No,
it's rich
and,
kids.
And thank the Lord for Mahmoud, who's able to kind of rise above, continue to make those clear points, as continues to just be, I don't know, kind of moral lightning rod that's much needed in this country.
Yeah, and everything that he published should be reprinted and taught to college students, taught to high school students. It is incredibly heroic stuff, and to continue pressing a guy like that that's been through that.
No, he gave you the answer. You trying to get a kind of a gotcha. It's an attempt to derail and distract from the message that he's getting at by making it seem like he supports killings, when he's saying over and over and over, I'm here to say stop the killing, stop the killing, stop the killing. You know, it is absurd, and he's right to say it. You see, if you watch the clip and you're not listening, you know, she makes this very, very smug face at him when he says, you know, these kind of questions are absurd and are meant to kind of derail and distract from the message. And he was right to do it. He's right to call that out and to push back against it, because it is absolutely it is absurd, and it is an attempt to try to silence folks like that.